Good morning, everybody. I was just perusing the news that's going on, and once again, we are seeing absolutely ridiculous story coming out of the High Court. I was just trying to enjoy my cup of tea and wake up properly, and I've obviously been woken up by this absolute clown show of a story. Now, as I often say in my stories, especially on topics like this, don't listen to what they say, look at what they do. And this is a great, great example of that on how our institutions actually hate the country and are working actively against us. Whether that is an actual intention of theirs, or whether they are just cowards and weak, or whether they are just bureaucratic automatons, just allowing the ship to sail in any direction that the currents take it. I can't fully answer that. I do firmly believe a lot of these people are ideologically driven, and I do think that they are. Some of it may be to do with Brexit revenge, and some of them may just hate the country. It may be a form of oikophobia. For those of you who don't understand that term, I suggest looking it up and learning about it. It's a very useful word. High Court quashes unlawful policy on vulnerable people in immigration detention. A charity, once again, a charity. This is an industry. These people are making lots of money doing this. I've exemplified that the other day in the corruption, where third world corruption in our legal systems. But there are many, many other cases of charities doing this. They are they hate Britain. They fetishize migrants, in my opinion, and they are a fifth column. They are destroying our society for the sake of their own feelings. A lot of it, and I think some of them may be dopamine junkies as well. Because every time they get involved in this, if you see them on, I'll try and find some links. But it's like that. There was the Swedish woman who stood up on a plane and wouldn't let the plane fly. If you do look for that, it happened, I think, during lockdown, possibly, maybe a bit earlier. We can see her, you can actually see it on her face that she's getting massive dopamine hits, like the way she's getting the involuntary face twitches and a smile sort of, like up and down all the time. She can't control it. You can tell she's high on dopamine. And that's what a lot of these people are doing. They're getting high on dopamine. So, a government policy of seeking a second medical opinion over vulnerable people in immigration detention risks delays to their potential release is unlawful, a High Court has ruled. High Court judge has ruled. Well, High Court judge, I think your interpretation of that law is wrong, personally. And I think you are a threat to the country because you are prioritising potentially incredibly dangerous people over the safety of the people of this country who live here. I think you're reckless, and I think you are an actual national security risk with this decision. Medical Justice, a charity which supports individuals detained in immigration removal centres, took legal action against the Home Office. I mean, where do these people even get the money from? Where do these charities? Because I'd never ever see these sorts of charities collected on the streets. And I believe I'm very well travelled across the United Kingdom with the type of work I've done for the last 10 years. Different types of jobs I've done. Never ever see these people collecting. Where do they get them? Well, possibly one possible solution. And I've not looked into this charity. I may do. One possibility is they're going to get the money off the government because, unfortunately, our government seems to think that giving taxpayer money to charities is a wise decision. I don't. I think it's absolutely insane. Another one is I think it's going to be from people like George Soros. And people might say, oh, it's anti-Semitic, but it's true. George Soros, at least not him personally, but his institution, his organisation, funds a lot of these mass migration charities. And I think, going off topic a little bit, I think because George Soros was famously affected by the mid-century Germans and he had to flee. So I think that George Soros may actually be politically motivated for reasons unknown fully to myself, but he may actually be motivated by a hatred of Europe, possibly for what happened to his family during the war. Arguing policy guidance could prolong the detention of an adult at risk who is particularly vulnerable to harm. Well, I don't care. Because it's all hypotheticals. What if? What if? What if? What if? What if? What if? Well, what if a meteorite falls out from the sky and hits them on the head, but then that kills them? What if a volcano erupts underneath the feet? It's all what ifs. You don't know. They're just guessing. And this is the problem with this type of law as well, is because it's all based upon feelings and sentiments rather than actual facts and history and provable things. You can just basically what if your way out of anything, and that's all they do. They just argue what ifs all the time. The policy required caseworkers to seek a second opinion from a Home Office, a contracted professional. I think something else that should happen as well is maybe a lot of these judges and lawyers who get involved in these cases start making them personally accountable for the bad decisions. I think maybe that should be an avenue that could get explored and say, well, Maybe not on one case, maybe not on two cases where the person goes wrong, because they do deal with, say, hundreds and hundreds of cases. But if we start seeing a pattern of individuals going on to do horrific things, maybe we should start looking at these legal experts and these charities and these people and holding them accountable for sponsoring these people to enter the country, so to speak, and for rubber stamping them as the legal experts, so to speak, and start saying, well, you've caused, because when I was a soldier in the army, if my actions had led on to a war crime or actions that had resulted in mass casualties, I would have been investigated for that and sent to prison. Very good chance of it. Or when I was a railway engineer, if I'd have done my job wrong and the train had derailed, or even, if I'd have just followed the job as instructed to, but those instructions I knew were incorrect and would lead to damage, or there was some sort of credible link for gross negligence, I would be held accountable. So why are these judges and these lawyers and these charities not being held for gross negligence? Why is there a two-tiered system in the legal system itself? There seems to be one rule for the plebs and another rule for the people who are actually involved in law itself, where they can support any dangerous cause they want with zero consequences coming back on themselves, because they don't have to live with the consequences of letting these people in the country. They live in the lovely plush parts of the country where it's nice and very homogenous, and surrounded by very wealthy people. They don't have to live next door to these people. It's not their children getting groomed and raped. It's not their children getting sold cheap drugs so that they become a permanent customer to these foreign dealers. It's not them who are getting stabbed in the street. I saw a video the other day of a girl getting slashed up by her Asian boyfriend. Now, I'm not saying it's only Asian boyfriends that do that. There's plenty of cases of white males doing that as well. But it's like, well, it's not happening to these judges and these lawyers' children, is it? It's not them that are getting that happening in the street. Anyway, lawyers for medical justice said it was not consulted over the June 2022 guidance, which they argue, oh no, a charitable organisation wasn't consulted in a legal and government decision. What a shocker! My goodness, will somebody think of the charities? They argued would delay the determination of a person's risk level and any decisions to release it. I mean, this is just, again, the weakness of the government, because the government could pass so many laws on this if they actually wanted to. They have a majority. They have an overall majority in Parliament. They could pass any law they want to. They could steamroll over this. They could disband these charities. They actually can remove the charitable status of these charities. They could say, unfortunately, you're going well beyond the remit of what's deemed acceptable as a charitable organisation, and you're interfering and meddling in politics. We're removing your charitable status. But they won't do it because they're weak. They are weak people. The Tories don't actually care. They care what other people think about them, because they're narcissists. The narcissists and predators, as in financial predators. We see this like with even the Prime Minister, with some of and the Home Secretary, and all of these scandals that came out from COVID as well, where the Tories were literally using it as a cash cow for themselves and the mates. Like Baroness Morn, I think it was, wasn't it? Multiple £1 million contracts for things that she and the people she knew had no experience in. And it was actually more expensive getting the aprons off her friend than it was from going to alternatives. So this is just absolutely the whole thing just stinks to high heaven. At a hearing in November, the charity's legal team said the document contradicts and undermines previous guidance approved by Parliament over protections, including the 2016 Immigration Act. Well, there we go. I mean, it's right there in that line right there. Previous guidance approved by Parliament. So maybe Parliament should produce new guidance where it supports not giving these people the rights that they currently have. How about that? That is a wild idea. What a crazy, crazy idea that is, isn't it? It's almost like Parliament made the rules, isn't it? It's almost like they're actually in charge of these rules, and these rules are then being used against them. And rather than changing the rules so they can't be used against them, they just carry on regardless. Because it's not about what they say, it's about what they do. Never, never, never forget that. Never, ever forget that. The Home Office denied the so-called second opinion policy was unlawful and contradictory, and that it had a duty to consult over it. But we'll just write it into the rules. You can write that into the rules. So this is it. They could actually put amendments in, and they won't. They just will not do it because they are feckless, useless idiots who only care about themselves and how they appear to others. But in a ruling on Friday, Mr. Justice Linden quashed the policy and concluding the government could not contradict or undermine previous guidance without the approval of Parliament. There we go. Without the approval of Parliament. They have a majority in Parliament. They could do that, but they're not doing it. I wonder why. He added, because this is, I'm going to answer that question actually. I'm not going to leave that hanging there just for say, because they actually want mass migration. That's why. Because they want all these people coming in the country because it looks good on the graphs. It doesn't actually help the average person, but with GDP, it looks good because when you get all these people coming in the country, you put them in a house. We need more houses building, so that looks good for the economy. You know, we need more white goods producing because all these people need a washing machine, they need a dishwasher, they need a tumble dryer, they need a shower installing, they need all the furniture in the house, they have to have clothes bought for them. Oh, they also need feeding every single day, 3 times a day, don't they? So that's more money going through tills, going through the economy, churning around so it looks good on paper. And that's what this is. It's all about making the GDP graph go up constantly. Oh, and it also helps the government to borrow as well, because by getting more people in the country, on paper they can justify, well, we've got all these people, so technically all these people can work and pay taxes, so they can then borrow more money from the Bank of England as well. So there's also that aspect of it. And that's what all this boils down to. It's just it's a financial exercise as far as they're concerned. They don't actually care about the long-term consequences. All they're concerned about is the graphs. That is a big part of this from the government side of it at the very least. He added, in my view, this is a case in which the defendant has undermined the rule of law in a direct and unjustified way by issuing a policy which positively authorises or approves unlawful conduct by caseworkers in that the terms of the second opinion policy require or encourage them to act contrary to the statutory guidance approved by Parliament. Change the rules. That's it. I know I've said it about 1,000 times now in this video. Just change the rules. It's that simple. You know, if you just get they are put it. It's like that. It's like the meme where that person's riding the bike. They put a stick in their own spokes, and then the next picture is them on the floor, and then it has the speech bubble above it, and then you put in whatever you want. You know, so that's exactly what this is. It's the government putting a stick in their own bike spokes, and then blaming the charities for them falling off the bike. Because I know you're doing this to yourself. We can see you doing it. You know. The judge said medical justice has a legitimate expectation to be consulted. Why? Over the policy that the Home Office has made no real attempt to explain or justify the failure to consult. The charity said the ruling meant potentially hundreds of vulnerable people a year who would otherwise have been detained. I mean, that's how over entitled are these people? They're a charity. You have absolutely no right whatsoever to be getting involved in government policy, whether you like it or not. You know, I don't get off your high horse and go off to someone. If you actually care, go deal with those countries and stop the flow of migration in the first place. Go fix the countries where they're coming from. But no, we'll just move them to your country instead. Drag your standards of living down to theirs instead. You know, why do what actually needs to be done, which is fix the countries? Because maybe they deep down they know you can't fix those countries because there's something about those different cultures that prevents other cultures from rising above a certain level. Maybe they understand that fact. So it's easier to look good and sound good by dragging everybody over to the first world instead, to developed countries, and eventually drag those countries down into the third world status. You know, maybe that's what this is all about, because in the short term period it looks good to them and feels good. Vulnerable people who would otherwise have been detained because of the policy, they should all be detained, will be released where medical evidence and no other immigration guidance requires it. No, they should all be detained and they should all be deported automatically. I said people who had the second opinion policy applied to them should seek advice over whether they have legal claims for unlawful. Now, why do these people also, all these migrants and these legal entries, why do they get all this legal advice? I've been, to people who've listened to my videos, a lot of my videos, you'll know, I've been through the family court twice, and I've been through financial tribunal against child maintenance twice, and I've still got ongoing problems with them at the moment. I've had to fund that all to myself to great expense. Not once. And by the way, just to be very, very clear, I've done nothing wrong. At no point have I ever done anything wrong, and it's been fully ruled in my favour in all cases, including, mysteriously, with this ongoing child maintenance. And just to let you know, with the child maintenance case, they were trying to overcharge me by a huge amount. Massive amount, by about 6 times. 12 times they were trying to overcharge me what I should have been paying. Would have actually bankrupted me. It was that obscenely over. So I didn't refuse to pay. I paid what I knew I should have been paying. And then I went to court, and when the tribunal actually came to it, they ruled him fully in my favour. This was going on for nearly 2 years, this child maintenance. During that period of time I was waiting to go to court, they were trying to send bailiffs around to my house, which they're not allowed to do because it hadn't been ruled on and it was in dispute. So they're not allowed to take bailiffs around. Using all sorts of terrorist type tactics, like threatening letters, phoning me up all the time, all this stuff. Anyway, went to court. Court spent 1 hour looking at it, said we've seen enough, and then they decided within 2 days. And then it took another month of me having to ring up child maintenance where they refused to enact the court order. So I had to get the court to then force them to enact the order. And now, because they've cocked up, they are now classing me as a non-pay, even though I was still paying my ex-wife the entire time, the amount. And court ruled I was overpaying her, in fact. So I had to get a rebate on that. Now they're classing me as a non-payer, so I've got to pay. So they now take money directly from my account and charge 20% on top of that. Because all these heroin addicts and people who don't pay and their partners receive money, people like me who get charged this direct repayment get the surcharge to cover that cost. So I'm now getting punished for having done nothing wrong and child maintenance cocking up. And I've got to fund all my legal representation for that and do it all myself. Whereas these people, they get it all on a silver platter. And you tell me where the justice in that is, please. You please explain to me how that's fair. When I've done nothing wrong other than pay my taxes and done the right thing. I followed the rules, done everything right as you're supposed to do, and I've been penalised. And I'm getting treated like a pariah by the government and the state. You tell me where that's fair. Anyway, those with histories of torture, trafficking, and trauma, as so many detained people have, are at particular risk of deterioration in their claim to have histories of torture and trafficking and trauma. I mean, are they really being trafficked when they're voluntarily choosing to go down these routes and where they're choosing to ask these people to do all this for them? I personally have no sympathy for them because they're doing this to themselves. So, again, this is where the war of words is used, and I've said this in multiple videos, where these people are using words as a cudgel to beat us over the head with and society, and I'm just sick of it now. I've got to the point, I am now personally at the point where I just don't care anymore. I don't even try to play these semantic games. When people say this to me, well, they've been trafficked, they've been tortured, I don't care. I just don't care. I don't want them in the country, and it's just that simple. I just think they are going to be a net drag on this, and just stick to the economics of it. They're going to bring nothing to the table, and they're going to drag the average standard of living down with their presence here. And the more of them we get, the worse it's going to get. And we are seeing that as our society crumbles around us. We see the potholes, we see the shops boarded up, we see the crime figures rising, etc., etc., etc. In requiring a second assessment by the Home Office contracted doctors, this policy by design risks re-traumatising already vulnerable people and prolonging their detention. I genuinely don't care. If you don't like it, leave. And it's that simple. They've managed to get themselves here all by themselves. You know, they've travelled from whatever country they've come from, halfway across the planet. I'm pretty certain they can get themselves back. This policy's provisions that the second assessment could be carried out purely on the basis of documents without the Home Office doctor ever meeting the detained person and then lead to the downgrading of medical evidence was also problematic. The Home Office's attempt to undermine the weight of external medical evidence in this way is unacceptable. I don't care. An immigration detention is set to expand. This judgment is an important reminder for the Home Office to conduct meaningful consultations and act in accordance with the law. What a load of tosh that was, in my opinion. Obfuscated rubbish, trying to pull at people's heartstrings, and it's using emotional blackmail to try and push their own political agenda. And I just think the government just needs to change the rules and the laws on it and just basically strip these people of any rights that they actually have. We can do it. We actually can do it. We can actually create laws where the government can overrule the courts, that their decisions are final, and where these people are classed as being second-class citizens in effect, or a different category, whatever you want to use, and where they do not have the same rights that everybody else has. Where they still have to be treated, obviously, with dignity and respect, blah, 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 but they are absolutely 100% getting deported, and there's not a single thing they can do about it. And you can even deny their right to legal consultation and even legal challenges. They can pass those laws if they want. They're just not willing to because they're cowards. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. If you found that insightful, informative, interesting, all that other sort of stuff, please like, subscribe, put a comment below. I'm going to carry on with my cup of tea now because it's getting cold. I'll speak to you all later. Bye-bye.